tragedy. And finally, we ask you to please continue to pray for all those affected. Again, that was Old National CEO Jim Ryan. Our thoughts are with the families who've lost loved ones, and we're also thinking and praying for the people who were injured in this attack, including our police officers. So for an update on their condition, I first would like to welcome Dr. Jason Smith, Chief Medical Officer at U of L Health. Dr. Smith?
Thank you, Mayor. So from U of L Health and U of L Hospital, I want to send my prayers and thoughts out to all the families that were affected yesterday, both those we treated and unfortunately those we did not. An update from us, we still have 4 patients in the hospital. 2 remain in the ICU. Officer Wilkes still remains in critical condition, but we have been able to upgrade our other patient in the ICU to stable condition. The other 2 remain in the hospital being treated for non-life-threatening injuries. I want to thank my team, again, the emergency department, physicians and nurses, my trauma team at U of L Health, and all those that supported us yesterday. I also want to send a thank you to the American Red Cross. We used 170 units of blood yesterday to treat these victims, which far outstrips our hospital capacity, and their ability to get us that blood to save those lives helped save those lives. So I want to thank them for that. I'll be happy to take questions at the end of the press conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Now for a brief update on some information about things that we've learned about the events and the assailant yesterday. I'd like to call on our Chief of Police, Jacqueline Gwynn Biller-Roel. Chief.
To the mayor and everyone who is in attendance on today, we have learned that the suspect in this incident was a current employee with Old National Bank. We have also learned that he purchased the weapon used in this tragic incident on yesterday, on April the 4th. He purchased the weapon legally from one of the local dealerships here in Louisville. We have executed a search warrant on his residence, and we have recovered items, and we cannot get into specific details on what we recover at this time because, again, the investigation is ongoing, and we want to make sure that we're providing accurate information. The family deserves that, and the community deserves that. We also would like to share that later on this afternoon, we will be releasing body-worn camera footage of the incident. And so that information at the time will be released to you and the location, so everyone will be privy to that information. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. We need to acknowledge that a tragedy like this affects everyone. I've already talked about some of our first responders and colleagues in Metro government. Thanks also to the faith leaders and social workers and mental health professionals who provided comfort and counsel to people in understandable distress. I also want to acknowledge the teachers and parents who had to have difficult conversations with our children throughout our community about this inexplicable act of violence and cruelty. We're all feeling shaken by this, and scared, and angry, and a lot of other things too. It's important that we come together as a community to process this tragedy in particular, but not just this tragedy. Because the reality is that we have already lost 40 people to gun violence in Louisville this year, including another young man yesterday, just a few blocks away from Old National Bank, shortly after this tragic incident happened. That was a separate targeted incident, but the result was the same. Needless tragedy, needless loss of life. In order to help the people of our community, of our great city, come together and deal with this outbreak of tragedies, to grieve, to pray, to unite, I'd like to announce that we are going to be hosting a vigil tomorrow, Wednesday, at 5 p.m. at the Muhammad Ali Center Plaza. This vigil will be to acknowledge the wounds, physical and emotional, that gun violence leaves behind. It will be an interfaith opportunity for our entire community to come together, to grieve, to heal, to begin to move forward. We also know that Wednesday is a night of worship for many across our city. And so, working with Paul Callanan and his colleagues at the Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhood, we will be having grief counselors at over a dozen churches throughout our city that have regularly scheduled worship on Wednesday evenings as well. We invite the entire community to join us at the Muhammad Ali Center tomorrow at 5 p.m. And also, if you prefer to worship on your own, again, we will be providing some grief counselors, and we'll have a list of those churches where members of Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhood will be located by mid-afternoon today. And I want to thank the Muhammad Ali Center for hosting this vigil on such short notice. One really loving thing in the midst of this tragedy has been the sheer number of people locally and around the world who've shown such love and support for our city. It means a lot to my wife, Rachel, and I. We are deeply grateful on behalf of everyone in Louisville for those who have reached out from beyond and within our city borders. There are so many people who want to do something, who have offered to help, who see this nightmare unfold and want to make it better somehow. We love and appreciate that so much. For those of you who are looking to take action right now, to show your support for the first responders who are trying to save lives, and for the victims of gun violence, one great way to do that is to donate blood. According to Johns Hopkins University, gunshot wounds require much more blood than other types of injuries. You just heard Dr. Smith talk about the amount of blood that was needed and used yesterday. He mentioned his thanks to the Red Cross. We're very thankful to the American Red Cross, so we encourage people to make an appointment to donate at redcrossblood.org. That's redcrossblood.org. We encourage everyone to donate blood, and if you can't, there are other ways to support the American Red Cross with donations or your time. So next, I'd like to call up Steve Cunanan, who's CEO of the Louisville Red Cross. Steve?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Our thoughts and our deepest sympathies are with the people of Louisville and those that have been impacted by Monday's tragic shooting. At the request of local emergency management on Monday, the American Red Cross Louisville area chapter and its volunteers helped support a family reunification center. The Red Cross continues to work with local authorities and their community partners and is helping to provide aid and assistance to those people affected by this tragedy. At this time, the American Red Cross is working closely with the University of Louisville Hospital, and as Dr. Smith has mentioned, we have provided more than 170 units of blood products to the hospital to treat those that have been affected by this. The Red Cross stands ready to provide additional blood and blood products upon the request. And as the mayor has mentioned, volunteer blood donors are needed each and every day to help save lives. This tragedy illustrates that it's the blood that's already on hand and on the shelves that helps during an emergency. Type O negative is the universal blood type, and that is what the emergency room personnel use and what they reach for when they don't have time to determine a blood type, and that's one of the types that is needed most. The American Red Cross is grateful to all those donors who generously give blood throughout this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, to all you and all of your colleagues at the Red Cross. There's one more topic that we need to talk about today, and that's guns. Yesterday's tragedy brings us to 40 people who've been shot to death this year in our city. That level of gun violence is beyond horrific, and it's beyond anything we can and will accept in our community. Our police did a heroic job yesterday and every day. And we are already doing a lot to reduce the amount of gun violence in our city and make Louisville safer. We're investing in neighborhoods and in people who have been overlooked for generations, so every child has an opportunity to succeed and pursue their hopes and dreams. We're going to invest more in mental health care. We're working to make universal pre-K a reality. Workforce development initiatives for young and older adults alike. These are all important. These are all also long-term solutions. We have to take action now. We need short-term action to end this gun violence epidemic now, so fewer people die on our streets and in our banks and in our schools and in our churches. And for that, we need help. We need help from our friends in Frankfurt and help from our friends in Washington, D.C. This isn't about partisan politics. This is about life and death. This is about preventing tragedies. You may think this will never happen to you, never happen to any of your friends or loved ones. I used to think that. The sad truth is that now no one in our city, no one in our state, no one in our country has that luxury anymore. Last year, I survived a workplace shooting. And now yesterday, I've lost a very close friend in another workplace shooting. 5 more families have lost a loved one. It has happened in Louisville. It could happen in Paducah, in Pikeville, or in Covington. This is happening in America everywhere and will keep happening until we say enough and take meaningful action. Congressman McGarvey will talk about some things at the federal level. So I'll address what we can do at the state level. I have 2 requests today for every Kentucky state senator and every Kentucky state representative who wants to join me in reducing the amount of gun violence in Louisville. First, if you support police officers like Officer Wilt and Officer Galloway, who heroically ran into a barrage of fire from a waiting assailant with an assault rifle, if you support local decision-making to address local issues, if you want to help our state's largest city thrive, please give Louisville the autonomy to deal with our unique gun violence epidemic. Let us, the people of Louisville, make our own choices about how we reduce gun violence in our city. Other communities should be able to make the policies that work for them. Let us implement policies that work for us. So please change our state law to let Louisville make its own decisions about reducing the amount of illegal guns on our streets and gun violence that is killing far too many people in mass shootings, in individual shootings, in any shootings. Let me be clear. I don't care about finger pointing. I don't care about blame. I don't care about politics. I'm only interested in working together with our state legislators to take meaningful action, to save lives, to prevent more tragic injuries and more death. Arguing is not a strategy. Doing nothing is not a strategy. It's not a solution. The second thing, and to those In the national media that are joining us here today, this may be even more shocking than it is to those of us locally who know this and are dealing with this. But under current Kentucky law, the assault rifle that was used to murder 5 of our neighbors and shoot at rescuing police officers will one day be auctioned off. Think about that. That murder weapon will be back on the streets one day under Kentucky's current law. My administration has already taken action to remove the firing pin before turning confiscated guns over to the state, because that's all that the current law allows us to do. That's not enough. It's time to change this law and let us destroy illegal guns and destroy the guns that have been used to kill our friends and kill our neighbors. I know every member of the state legislature, like everyone else in our state and in our country, is horrified by what we saw yesterday, by what we see in other cities around the country. None of us wants this to happen again. None of us wants this to happen in our neighborhood, but it will keep happening. That's why we have to do more than what